Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to continue with our leather jacket. Last week I posted part 1 where I showed you the whole fitting and pattern making process, and today we're going to continue with actual leather work. So we're going to cut out all the pattern pieces, prepare everything, and make it all ready for starting to sew basically. Last week I went leather shopping and I took you with me on my Instagram, so I'm going to show you a little bit of how the leather buying process works basically. I'm going to show you my leather first though. This is what I ended up with right here. This is incredibly smooth. I am so in love with the texture and obviously the look to it. I wanted to have something that looked very, very natural. I wanted it to be very rustic, I guess, and this is just the perfect look that I was going for and that I'm super happy to have found. So that is the leather that I purchased, and then I also purchased this leather right here for all of the small itty bitty pieces on the inside that you don't really need and see. So I won't be doing these out of this good, great, expensive leather, but will use this other leather instead for other pieces, which I will be going through with you guys as well, so don't worry about that. Speaking about buying leather, that is, in my opinion, a whole different thing than buying fabrics, because obviously you don't buy yardage or meters. You have this, which is obviously, since it came from an animal, just a specific amount, and you actually do that in square meters here. So you buy square meters. These are all labeled on the wrong side of the leather. You're gonna find somewhere a number, or like with a sticker put on there, like this right here. And this says 81 is basically the square meter amount, or square centimeter in this case amount, that this skin measures. So you're going to have a square meter price, and then you're going to have all of the hides that have a specific amount, or like have a specific size, and then you're going to pay respectively that amount. So I have to warn you, leather is not cheap. Leather is something special. It is something that you should cherish and not, like make it and then throw away. Obviously, this is not fast fashion. This is something that hopefully stays with you for a very, very long time. And obviously you want to check what kind of leather you're buying, or like what kind of store you're going to, where they get their leather from, and so on and so forth. So do your research. Obviously, that's also another thing. You don't have to do this jacket out of leather. As you can see, I made it in a denim fabric as a mock-up. It looks very good as well. And I made sure to prepare the pattern to both fabric and leather work. So if you're interested in making this a denim jacket, you totally can. I have the grain line on it. I have everything prepared and like written down. If you do it with fabric, do this. If you do it with leather, do that. So don't worry about that. You can totally do this jacket in a fabric as well. So I quickly put out the hide right here in front of me, and as you can see, I laid it out flat, but you're always gonna have some sort of bubbling up right there, as this is not a complete flat surface. But that's fine. As soon as you're going to cut out all of your pieces, this will not be too big of an issue. Another thing though, just know that probably your leather will color your hands. So keep in mind that you might want to wash your hands in between a few times, as you don't want to have this colorant on your hands. You can also work with gloves if you want to. I don't really like it because I want to feel the material on my skin, but I just wanted to tell you. And then also what you want to do is a quality check. So there always will be some sort of imperfections, I guess. So right here, for example, you see a hole. So you want to either mark it on the wrong side, or if you can already see it, you just want to be mindful about that, as you don't want to cut out something and then it's gonna have a hole in the middle of your piece. Also this right here, for example, is like a fold, so maybe you don't want to have that in front, so use that for maybe a part that is not as important, like, the belt, where the belt will be over the belt pieces anyway, so it's going to be hidden. and so on. So I already posted reels about how you do that. There's a load, like loads of reels about working with leather, starting with leather, and you know, like quality checking and how you manufacture and so on. All of that is on my Instagram already. I am trying to, you know, get into the whole topic of leather working. So you might have already seen that, but I wanted to make sure to also say that here in my YouTube video, so that you also know what's up here if you don't have Instagram or if you haven't seen it yet. So what I would start now is, first of all, have the wrong side facing up, because you can draw on here however much you want, but because all of this won't be visible, which is kind of sad too, because I love that color as well. So, you know, this is the wrong side. It will be completely lined. There won't be anything of that showing. Obviously, this is not see-through, so you won't see anything on the right side of this, so that you know you can just draw on this however you like. And then I have all of my pattern pieces here. They are already divided up into the pattern pieces that will be cut out of this leather. And then I also have another section of lining and pockets and whatever. The only thing that I wanted to do here is, this is the pocket flap, so this will sit here and it's gonna have an inside. So I will be cutting out the inside of this pocket flap out of the other leather, as it's not gonna be visible. So like this, and then also the facing pieces of the hem will all get cut out of the other leather, I guess. I can also, if I wanted to, do the collar out of the other leather. So it's like slimming down a lot if you have the option to cut something out of another type of leather to save a little bit of the expensive one. So these are all not facings, but the outside of the hem, this is another facing. And I would just go through and divide those up, and then I'll come back to you. So I have my 3 piles right here. This is the biggest pile with, this is all the expensive leather. This is a smaller pile just to be cut out of the cheaper leather. And this is half-half, so I have to do 2 out of the expensive one and then the other 2 out of the cheaper leather. So this is the pocket flap. As I said, the inside of the pocket flap will be the cheaper leather. This is the belt. Same thing, the inside will be out of the cheaper leather. These are the epaulets. I don't know how you say that in English, because we say it French in German, but basically that, the thingies that go over here. And that's it basically. So these 4 things are to be cut out of both. Just cheap, just expensive. So it already is a lot less for the expensive leather, even though the big pieces are still, you know, the expensive leather, obviously. So this is the front piece, for example, this is the yoke and so on. These are fairly huge pieces, but let's start. So to start off, first things first, there is no grain line, so you can put on your piece however you want, however it fits. So this is the very, very front piece. So I want to cut this out at the very beginning to have like the best structure on the surface right here, even though it doesn't really differ that much. So I can go ahead, and also right here, this piece will be folded over. So all of this here will be not really seen, as the facing of the label will sit on top of it. So this right here is the important stuff. This here is not so important. So I can go ahead and push this to the side. This might not be the best quality of leather, that's why I can put this over there. And as you see, I am trying to smooth out the wrinkles to have a flat surface for my pattern piece. And then I can weigh down my pattern and cut out this pattern piece with seam allowance. I'm going to add 1 centimeter seam allowance all around this. As per usual on my patterns, I don't have seam allowance on it, so you need to add that. Once you've cut this out, you need to turn it around and cut it out again. Make sure you turn it around. You don't want to cut a big piece out of leather and then realize that you have the right side twice. Be sure to turn it around. That is one very, very big mistake to do, so just don't. This is always a bit scary to just start cutting out. And I'm using my rotary blade for that. It's the easiest thing to cut out, you know, from the very middle, and it also keeps the wrinkles out of the pattern piece, so it keeps it smooth basically, which is really nice. As with every other pattern pieces, you want to mark your notches, preferably with scissors that work. And I'm fairly loosely marking my pocket placement. I mark my fold line here for the lapel, right there, so I have a notch here for my collar, and then I have another notch here for my lapel, and then this is for the collar as well. So that is the first piece cut out right there. So as you see here, there is a gradient. This will sit like this with the facing on top of it. You won't see that. I think it looks quite cool actually, but that's just something you need to watch out for. So this will be like that. Now we're gonna turn our pattern to this side and go ahead and cut out the other piece. So another thing that I wanted to say, if you have spots on the corners, like here or up there, let me show you, where the corner is missing because that was just the end of the piece, that really doesn't matter as long as you have enough enough material for the actual piece. You're fine with this. This will be cut off probably eventually. So I'm also cutting into the seam allowance to mark the notches here, and then also the placement for the pocket. And then I will be going through all the pattern pieces until I cut out everything. This is gonna take a long time, and once we're done with that, we have to put interfacing on those. So let's go. Okay, I finally managed to cut everything out. I actually had to cut out my belt, both the facing and the outer side, out of the expensive leather because I didn't have enough of the cheap leather. That was, you know, not planned, but that's fine, as the belt is also one piece that is, like, the wrong side is probably visible when wearing. I am totally fine with having this made out of the expensive leather on both sides. So that is just something that I had to figure out. But other than that, everything is prepared now, and the next step is to put interfacing on. Okay, my mic died, so I wanted to say to put interfacing on all of the pattern pieces that needed, so very sorry about that. A quick thing that I wanted to tell you guys, as there is a lot of stuff going on, it's essential to keep your pattern pieces organized. So when I was cutting out my pieces, I had it sorted into the parts of just the expensive fabric material, the non-expensive material, and then both. Now, since I cut everything out, these piles change. I'm going to put all of the pieces that need interfacing into one pile and all of the pieces that don't need interfacing into one pile, so that it is sorted again, and then I can just, you know, grab all the pieces that need interfacing and put it on the interfacing and iron it on. And then once done with that, I will probably also sort it to, like, the locations where they're supposed to go, so like back, front, sleeve, small pieces, and so on and so forth. So that is just a tiny little thing that might make your experience a bit more nice, I guess. That's just how I do it, but I'm sure that everybody has their own way of sorting and, like, keeping everything organized and stuff, but I just wanted to share mine. Okay, so now that I have interfacing on all of the pattern pieces that need it, I can go ahead and put interfacing tape also on the pattern pieces. So this right here is the label. This is going to be the inner label, so it is going to be the one that sits on the inside. The facing of the label is gonna, you know, fold over top of it. We're going to put interfacing tape on here too, just using regular interfacing tape. Color doesn't matter, as none of this will be see-through. And I have my notches right here that mark the placement of my label. I'm going to put this onto the inner side of the fold line. So the fold line is right on this corner. And I'm also going to add interfacing tape all around here, going into the shoulder seam. So just like that, I'm gonna continue doing that on the other side as well. This is the collar. I'm also gonna put interfacing all around here. This right here is the back yoke. I'm going to add interfacing tape to the back neck cutout right here. Okay, it's the next day. Excuse everything. I had the worst sleep of my life. I did not catch any sleep basically at all, and I have a sore throat. I don't know why, but everything's not fine. So I don't want to get sick, but I feel like I will. So excuse everything. I'm still in my PJs. But anyways, let's continue with our project. The other day I prepared my pieces to start sewing basically already. I put interfacing on it, I put interfacing tape on it. It was a whole thing, like it took the whole day. It was crazy. It's so crazy how much you underestimate how long these things take, but like it takes a long time. So be prepared to, like, you know, add in a day for just that. The next thing on our list of preparation is preparing the sewing machine. It's not too much that we have to prepare, but since we are sewing with thicker threads, like leather or like denim is also a thicker thread. So it is this thread right here. I don't know if you can tell, but it's like a thicker thread, right? So that's the difference basically. And this is like really strong, thick thread, so perfect for leather works. And we're gonna put this in our sewing machine and adjust the settings for it. Usually for thicker thread, the only thing that you have to do, for my sewing machine at least, and the ones that I've been working with so far, to just put the tension like very tight so that the tension is basically tighter, because otherwise it just goes through and it's way too loose. So this right here, always save your scraps for something like this, because you want to make a stitching test. You want to do it on a single layer, you want to do it on a double layer, to see if it works, and then also check if your needle is correct. I'm using the biggest needle I have. It's like size 100. Usually I'm working with 80 or 90, but usually with an 80. So I'm using 100 now, and if that doesn't work, because this is a rather thick leather for clothing, I will be using my leather machine, which is right there, which has a walking foot and like a size 130 needle. So that is perfectly fine, and I should be fine with that. But usually a 100 also works. You also want to change your foot to a Teflon foot, which is this right here, because that just glides over the leather easily. Whereas the other one, the metal one, usually bulks up the leather and it just doesn't work quite well. So that's another thing that you have to consider. And yeah, I think that's it for now. Let's prepare the sewing machine. So the first thing that I want to start with is actually one of the hardest, so that we have the most difficult thing out of the way. Either this pocket or that pocket. I'm tending towards this pocket as at least it's covered. So there's going to be a piping in here and then a pocket flap on top. It's all like printed onto the pattern, like put on there, as you can see right there. So I guess if anything happens, we can just cover it, and then we can continue on with the zipper detail right here, which is in the open basically. So if anything happens here, you're gonna see it. So fingers crossed. We're gonna prepare everything as neat as possible. We have glue right here. You need leather glue for this. Any leather glue or shoe glue or something like that is, you know, you can use. I just got this one. I've worked with that in the past. Works fine. Don't underestimate the amount of glue that you'll need either. I think I'm going to go through 2 of these tubes, but you know, just as a heads up. And then we can continue with the zipper, but we have to put the belt detail on the hem right there before that. So let's do this pocket up here. For that, we need the pocket flap right here. So we cut out 2 pieces of the expensive leather and then 2 pieces of the cheaper leather. We're just gonna put right sides together, and as you can see, they don't fit together. That's because they should not. We are going to have to make them fit together though. So we're gonna start with everything lined up here in the edge. Don't worry about this corner here, I just didn't have enough space on my leather. And then we're going to make it fit onto the longer piece right there by pulling on it, and then we continue doing that all around here and at the very end right here. That way we're making sure that the facing, so this leather right here, will never be seen or visible on the outside, and we're gonna do that for both of these. Okay, so I've prepared 1 pocket. This is what we're going for. As you can see right here, it has the ditch of the seam here on the wrong side of the pocket flap. And then on this side, you don't see anything of the cheaper leather. To achieve that, we're going to take our scissors and cut down the seam allowance of the layer that's going to lay on the wrong side. So for me, it's this cheaper leather, down quite drastically to about 3 millimeters, something like that. And only that one, not the expensive leather. I'm also using old scissors for that, not my expensive fabric scissors. And I'm cutting down the corners, as I already did here, like this, so that once I turn everything right sides out, they're gonna sit nicely and it's not gonna overlap and bulk up. And that's exactly what we're doing now. We're gonna turn it right sides out, use some sort of tool to poke out the edges. It's never gonna be a perfect edge. It's always gonna be somewhat round, but you can still make it prettier by using a tool like this. And then once that's done, you're gonna need some sort of rolling device. I have this, which is quite handy. You can also use a rubber hammer to like hammer down the seams here and to make it flat and even. And then just with pressure, you're gonna go all around these edges and just flatten the edges as best as you can, like that. And now we're gonna go in with our glue, and we want to make sure to get glue to both sides of the seam allowance. So on one side and then also on the other, making sure that it is everywhere here on the inside, so everything, you know, glues down nicely. This can be a bit messy with pockets as they are a closed piece. And then I'm just going to add more glue over the whole flap on both sides. Not pressing too much on the tube, otherwise it's just gonna spill out. Make sure to never lay your piece down on your surface if there is glue anywhere, because it's not gonna be nice. And now we can wiggle this around and press it again so that the glue disperses nicely and evenly on the inside. We also want to make sure that the ditch is evenly on the wrong side throughout the whole piece. And that's basically it. And this is what these 2 pieces look like. They should be somewhat the similar size. You're never gonna get it exactly perfect, but similar size is fine. And now we can let it dry completely. I'm gonna cut off the seam allowance that's sticking out here at this corner like this, and now I'm going to add double top stitches, so one pretty closely to the edge and then another one about 5 millimeters in. That is going to be my top stitching throughout the whole piece, so I will add these everywhere that think it looks nice. You can do that however you like, you can design that yourself, you can also not add top stitches if you like. I'm going to add closures here in these corners too, so push buttons, which I don't have yet, but they are on their way. And I think that's going to be like a really nice add-on. And this is basically how you work with leather generally, obviously not very much in detail because there are a few other methods, but they're not really needed for a leather jacket. So this right here is basically how you know, work on the inside with leather. You always roll it and like press it down and flatten it. You then glue it and then you press it again, and then you might want to top stitch. So that's basically it. I will tell you when working on these specific parts how I'm doing it. You know, if I am like putting your seam allowances to one side, or like if I open them, if I top stitch once, double top stitch, I'm going to tell you that throughout, so don't worry about that. But generally this is how you do it, and that's what we will continue doing as well. Now I'm going to add the double top stitches, and then we can put this onto our front piece and like cut into the whole piece and stuff. So let's go. So I had to switch to my leather machine, that one here in this corner, because my other machine wasn't handling the thread too well. I think it was just a little bit too thick, like the material and the thread combined were too thick, I guess. So be aware that that might happen, and if you don't have a suitable machine that can handle these types of materials and threads and so on, you might not be able to work with leather for this jacket. But I made it work, and it doesn't look too bad, honestly. This is the one that I worked on my leather machine on, and this is the one that I did on my other normal machine. Both are heavy-duty machines, so yeah, I just wanted to say that. I finished the pocket flaps now, and this is what they ended up looking like. And now we can continue preparing the other thing that we need for the pocket, which is the pocket facing, which is this right here. And that's pretty easy to do. We just have to fold this in half. I'm using my roller again. And then we're going to glue these together. And I'm trying to keep the glue spots on my cutting mat to a minimum, because it is so annoying if you get glue spots on the right side of your leather pieces. It won't come off. At least I don't know any methods. If you know any, put them in the comments down below. I bet it helps people out, because it happened to me already for like the pocket flap. I had to recut it. And that was annoying. First thing that I did, and it already didn't work out as planned. But anyhow, I'm preparing this. So I already prepared one side of the pocket. This is what it should end up looking like. This turned out really, really nicely, and we're going to try to copy this to the other side, and I'm going to show you how I did this. So we need the pocket flap, the pocket piping, and then the pocket itself, and of course the front piece right here with the pattern. The first thing that I did was to just mark out the placement of the pocket on the wrong side of my material, because it's just easier to draw on it, and we're going to cut into our leather into a front piece in just a second. So this needs to be nice. And as I said before, you can use any marker for this. I just have my washable marker right here. I'm going to mark the placement of the pocket, making sure that it is 2 centimeters apart. This should also match up with the notches here in the dividing seam that we did already, and then we're going to close it off here. And then I'm also going to put the cutting line into the pocket, stopping about 1.5, let's say, centimeters before this edge here, and then just connecting this in this triangular shape to the corners. And then I can use my rotary cutter to cut into my piece right here. So I'm going to cut onto this middle line all the way over here until it reaches this area over there, so the triangle. And then the rest I'm going to do with good fabrics, or like with good scissors. So I'm going to cut right towards that edge on both sides, just like that. And if you've done pipe pockets before, it's the same method of doing pipe pockets. We have one side open, which is to our advantage, and this is just a different material, but basically it is the same. We're going to start with putting our piping in. So this goes right here, and we are going to align these at the stitching line. So at 1 centimeter in from this corner and from this corner. They should meet here, and you're going to find that the piece also, I'm going to show you on the inside, is going to meet 1 centimeter in from the short corner over there. And I'm just going to use some clips to hold these together, and then as you can see here, we're going to sew right towards where we stopped cutting here. And since we have our line already drawn on, we're just going to follow this blue line here from this corner all the way to here. Now that we have this put on, we can go ahead and already try to flatten the seam with the ruler. And then to put this piece right here, so it's going to sit just like this, we're going to fold this side here, so where the center front is and the collar and everything, to the right, and like peel this here open, so this triangular shape. And we want this one corner and the other corner to sit right and left of the piping. And I'm just going to use clips again to just hold it in place here. And then we're gonna start sewing from this corner here and just go over to the other side that the clip is on now. And this is what it looks like. So now we can go ahead and flatten it even more and like make this corner look nice and straight and everything. And now we can already put the pocket flap on here. So there is a few things that you have to watch out for. So this sits right here. Let me just turn it around. So right here at this edge, the corner of your already finished pocket flap needs to sit. So when you turn it around, the pocket flap like covers this edge here nicely and just sits perfectly in here. So that's why we want to have the pocket flap like sit right here on this edge. So it's going to sit like this in the very end. So that's what we want. And then from that side, we work our way to the dividing seam here. And once we sew that, this should end 1 centimeter inwards. We have seam allowance on here, so the stitching line for our front dividing seam is right here at the edge of the pocket flap. So that is where it's supposed to end up. You can also, if you are unsure about that, use a washable pen and measure from the dividing seam towards the inside from both edges, and like just put a dot there, and that is where the pocket flap needs to sit. So like also from 1 centimeter measured inwards, it needs to just match out with that dot. And then you can clip these in place and just continue fixing the rest in place, and then sew the pocket flap on here from here to here. And this is the result. We can go ahead and also flatten out this upper seam. We're going to add top stitches to at least the upper part. At least I'm going to do that. I'm not going to add top stitches to the piping, just because I found that this also looks pretty nice on its own. So there's no need for me. You can do that if you'd like to. You can design it however you want. So that's just open to you. Before you do any top stitches though, you want to add your bag, or like your pocket, this piece right here. The flat pocket. This is just a rectangle with a fold line off center. It's not in the middle. It is 2 centimeters off center. That's because the piping is 2 centimeters and the seams on which these will get attached to lay 2 centimeters apart. So like this. That's why you have this off center fold line. To attach the pocket, we're going to turn the pocket over, or like wrong sides up, and have the shorter side of the pocket right sides onto the piping seam allowance, with the pocket just matching up here at the shorter edge. And we're going to sew this right on. You can do like a 0.5 centimeter seam allowance. Just don't stitch further in than these stitching lines, as you know, you're gonna see that otherwise. So just like stitch somewhere here. And the other side now gets connected to the upper seam where you attach the flap to, also right sides together. I'm just going to put this neatly in front of me so that I can align the bag. And you want to sew right across this line right here. Okay, now the pocket is in place. We can go ahead and close the sides of the pocket as well. And once we're done with that, we can glue the seam allowances in place so that all of this just looks a tiny bit flatter and better. To glue everything in place, we're going to start with the upper side. So I just peel the shoulder area down to expose the seam allowance, and I'm just going to add a tiny bit of glue right here. And then I'm like really putting my strength into peeling all of the seam allowance up, because it always like hangs over a tiny bit and we want the ditch of the seam to be exposed basically. And this needs to be glued in place. Then I'm going to continue with this small piece right here. So I'm also just going to peel open that seam allowance and then just adding glue here. That was a big glob because it just poured out. And with that, I really want to make sure to have everything at a right angle. So especially this here needs to be fully covered by the flap. I don't want to see any of that piping at all. So to do that, I am pulling on this side here, and then I can glue this in place. And we're gonna do exactly the same, making sure to pull down. And that's that. And now you can see how everything just looks very, very neat. I'm going to add top stitches up here to match the other side. So basically I came out from the ditch here and did like a top stitch closely to the seam, and then I did another one 5 millimeters apart to like get this effect here. And that is the pockets on the front piece here, both done. I think we're gonna end today's video here, which I'm really happy about. If you're interested in following along with this journey, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below and ring the bell so you'll get notified every time that I post. I post on Sundays, so you can keep an eye out for that. And in the meantime, if you just are interested in tips and tricks all around my projects that I'm doing, I am doing loads of leatherworking tips. You can go and check out my Instagram and give me a follow there. The handle is exactly the same as on all of my other social media, so Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest, and also my Etsy store is the most direct way to support me and to keep videos just like this one coming. So if you're interested in that, also there is a link down below. So thank you so much for watching, and I'm gonna see you next Sunday. Bye guys!